meeting, and then they Okay, we are ready to rumble. Happy Monday, everybody. Today is Monday, January 12th, 2026, and we are kicking off with a workshop on capital improvement planning, the first of two this evening. I think our team has a presentation kind of to walk us through. Is that going to be you, Mr. Sturgis, or our amazing finance director?
That would be our amazing finance director, Madam Chair. Thought it'd be important at this juncture, if it's good to get started.
Yeah, please.
Thought it would be important at this juncture with the council to, as we're about to embark upon the budget season once again, to look at, in a sense, a refresher course when it comes to capital planning as to the structuring and why we do that and how the mechanisms by which capital planning is performed, and then also to look at a 101 for some of our newer counselors to kind of bring them up to speed as to what's been out there. So, we got through the budget process last spring, but then there's a lot more to it, and thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of explore it on more of an in-depth basis as to the functionality and the thoughts behind it. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to Helene as far as working on her presentation and what she's brought forward for this evening.
Great. Thanks, Helene. And Matt?
Good evening. So we're here to talk about CIP, Capital Improvement Plan. And before we get started, I kind of wanted to just kind of give you as Matt suggested, just kind of give you an understanding of what's included in our CIP and how we come about with the numbers that we do. So what we look at is our capital assets, whether it's buildings, vehicles, equipment, IT equipment, the things that we use in the technology, our computers, whatnot, everything. We kind of take a glance at everything. Each department kind of gives us what their needs are from each perspective of each department. So how we do and how we figure it out is what we use is called depreciation. So we do use what's called straight line depreciation. And what we do is basically we look at what the value of that piece of equipment is, and then we determine what the useful life of that equipment. And what we do is that's what we do it on a straight line. So if you have a vehicle that's $100,000 and its useful life is about 4 years, then what we're doing is depreciating $25,000 a year, or basically saying that it's costing us about $25,000 a year to have that vehicle.
Do you have a question?
Yeah,
Mike?
depreciation costs, just to clarify, is debt, like any debt associated with I'm assuming that's calculated into the depreciation, right?
Not
No.
for what we use it for our purposes. We're
Okay.
using it strictly to know how much it's costing us on an annual basis to have that piece of equipment.
Okay. So debt would be separate.
So as you can see here, it helps us understand how much we'll need to replace that that piece of equipment. It helps us look at planning in regards to what we're instead of waiting for something to break down and then to decide whether or not we need to purchase something later on. It helps us plan out what those expenses are going to be long term, and it helps guide us on our contributions to our capital assets, which I'll show you in a second. We do this every year as part of our budget process. We have that one section of capital improvement, and that's in essence what we're doing. So we're looking out at everything that each department needs to carry, and then determining total costs divided by useful life, and then determining how much that would cost on an annual basis to the town. It benefits this process, how we do this, allows us to have a smooth cost across fiscal years. And so that way, instead of waiting till something breaks, we're not having these spikes in our requests for assets or for purchase of assets. So when we're looking at it on a long-term basis. It allows us to, in essence, save up for these purchases so that year to year, we're bringing a stable amount into our savings for that capital assets rather than waiting for the last minute for something to break and then figuring out, are we going to borrow for it? Are we going to buy it outright? Are we going to lease it? This process, again, we do this usually normally through the budget process. So what ends up happening is the department heads will submit their requests to the town manager through the budget process. Then the town manager reviews it, makes sure that it seems adequate and reliable. And then we bring it to you forward through that budget process as the town council. And again, all of this is done in public. So here is, for example, a very sample based of how we come about what our needs are annually when we give you a CIP budget year to year. So we're looking at each individual asset, determining what that total cost is, then either through information that the department heads know in regards to how long a piece of equipment will last, or determining whether or not how long equipment usually lasts on a, based on information they received about this asset, will determine what the useful life is. So we take that cost and divide it by that life to determine what that annual depreciation is. That's the number. So in this case, we had 3 assets. I just randomly selected amounts and useful lives. And what we do is we determine how much we should be putting or setting aside each year in order for that, when we make that purchase again, have that money saved up for that asset to purchase again. Doesn't necessarily we will buy it in that year. It's just so that we have the money saved up when it's ready, when there's a necessity to make that purchase. So in this example, you'll see that what I'm showing you is each year we're setting aside a depreciation, but not only are we setting aside a depreciation, but sometimes we like to build in a COLA for it, because we know that every year prices go up. So we don't want to stay saving on an amount that was 10 years ago. So we do try to put in a COLA, if you will. Yeah, an escalator to make sure that we stay current on how much we're saving each year for that asset. And then what you'll see is, like, for instance, here, we're buying asset C in year 1, and we're showing you then we're putting away these amounts each year based on our CIP requests through the budget process. And so along the bottom row, you'll see how we will have negative balances or positive balances in the long run if you were to keep going out. But this would be in an instance where this is the year you would make that purchase, and how, based on what we're setting aside, where the balance would be. In this scenario, basically the town is self-financing the assets. And we do that quite a bit here, where we will carry a negative balance knowing that we have other accounts that have positive balance to offset that. But each department have maintained a different, they each have their own set of funding to keep track of each department's set aside of fixed assets, but all of the funds are kept in one capital fund overall.
Helene, I just got a couple questions, if that's all right.
Sure, absolutely.
The first question is, when it comes to operating costs, that's separate from that, or are you folks looking at operating costs as well?
So this is strictly the cost of making the purchase of that asset.
Okay. Do we track operating costs down to a vehicle level at all, so that if we know something's costing more than it really should to retain it? So we don't have any records on that?
No, we don't
Okay.
really. I know that Chris's department, through Public Works,
Yep.
that they work with each of the department heads in order to make repair and maintenance on the vehicles, and they will make recommendations at that point
Okay.
on whether or not replacing an engine or buying a new vehicle at that point would be a recommendation.
Okay.
Councilman Holly, to that question, oftentimes what you'll find is if you have, let's say you had an ambulance that was aging out far too quickly, like you're gonna start realizing that quick, you're gonna start realizing when you've got a lemon. So
Sure.
that might expedite that up your timeline a little
Okay.
bit earlier than you would see. So if you're looking at something that's costing you more and more each year, a dump truck that was rusting out or had a failed transmission or a failed engine, things along the catastrophic, I guess you could say the catastrophic failure is one spike that you find in here. But if you do, overall, if you do fund that depreciation, at least it offsets it at that point if you're closer to the end. So you've got that to offset at least the impact that replacement is going to be. So you kind of fund that, but
Sure.
sometimes you find that the depreciation accelerates rapidly with a for all intents and purposes, a catastrophic failure with a piece of equipment.
Sure. No, I mean, I understand from a staffing standpoint, we're pretty lean, and it's a big ask to get down to that micro level on each asset, but, I kind of wonder, for myself, where we sit there, because, are we buying the right brand of asset? Is the operating cost too high versus a different brand? But you can't figure that out without being unknown. If you don't have the people to do it, there's an added expense there, and then the personnel expense offsets the financial analysis, in my opinion. So, but just was curious.
What would you say would be an operating cost equation? Because I would look at it like the total, if we're looking at a vehicle, for example, it would be like mileage, right? Like, or what would be your operating costs? Like, how would you calculate that or expect it to be calculated? I'm asking you, Jeff.
So you want to look at a couple things. You want to look at your preventative maintenance. You want to look at what they classify basically minor repairs, so tires, brakes,
Yep.
extended services, and then you want to basically look at, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, your fuel, it should also be calculated as well in there, and you take different pieces of equipment, and you'll have like track piece of equipment, you'll have what they call an undercarriage.
Okay.
You want to calculate that cost in there as well. So I mean that's all part of the whole equation and on the mechanical stuff.
Okay. Thank you. Learn something new every day.
I'm full of useless information.
That's why you're here.
It's true.
And honestly, to let you know that, we save each year for these items, and you'll see that in the next workshop as each department brings forward what their CIP looks like. But in essence, even though we're saving for it and you approve based on that saving through the budget process, it still requires that department head to come forward to the town manager and have that discussion as to the reason why we need to go ahead forward with making that purchase. And they will have to make that justification, like Jeff was saying, Councilor McCulloch was saying, is that there's going to be a review of the reasons why we need to go ahead and move forward, whether it's the engine blew or just the maintenance of the vehicle or the equipment is more expensive than just going out and going ahead and making a new purchase or not. And then that comes forward to the town manager for that final approval.
So, understood that we have kind of a process in place for when something goes wrong, right? But, oil prices are at a low, right? And so that also means that maybe paving might be cheaper right now than it might be, 10 years from now. And so do we also look at kind of market forces, and with that COLA, does that ever offer us the opportunity to kind of maybe pave like a little bit more this year because the costs are low than they might be, in another 3 years? Do we think about that from kind of a long-term planning perspective at all?
Yeah, I believe Chris reviews all of that. Chris makes those determinations, but it's also based on the amount of contracted services that we can afford to have, like how much work they're able to go ahead and push in that timeline that he has available to do that paving.
Right, okay.
Just while we're talking about paving, do we bid that on an annual basis, or do we just use a certain vendor? Or how's
Oh,
that work?
Yeah, we'll get competitive numbers out
Okay.
there based on, you know, I don't think they'll go out to a full RFP on it, but
Yep.
it's more, there's certain contractors that they'll know
Okay.
will do it, so they'll get multiple numbers to see as far as that'll go. And Counselor, Chairman, Madam Chair, to your point, if you can get more bang for your buck, we'll definitely try to explore that in years that the tonnage cost on that asphalt is reduced, and we could extend that to other areas, then we'll definitely take advantage of those buying opportunities. And in other years, you find that you know, that cost of the asphalt's gonna be, you know, the price of oil is gonna have an impact on that. So in those years, we could, that, you know, you kind of, that can balance out, I guess, over time. So, but if we can get a good number and from the vendor or from the supplier to get that done, we'll definitely try to take advantage of that. But overall, our pavement budget is fairly consistent year in and year out, with trying to maintain the paving plan that has been established.
And I imagine you don't lock them in for like the next 5 years based on today's price of asphalt, right?
No, you
Sadly.
yeah, I mean, you do it based on the pavement quality, pavement condition report that they'll do, and that, you know, that the town has done over years. So you
Okay.
can look at that and know which roads have the condition of their pavement is a certain level. And if you find, you know, some years you may find that someplace might age quicker. Something might happen underneath, so that pushes that up the scale. Overall, you can look at that review it on an annual basis to see how that tracks in comparison to what your timeline looks like, as well as what your capital plan shows for different roads. So you try to balance that, plus also what the public's anticipated desire for road surface quality is going to match with that too. But ultimately, it comes down to the condition and how it's holding up.
Makes sense, thank you.
From my perspective, I don't see us ever, things will never be cheaper than they are right now today. You know, if you look at your historical, take any 10 years, any 5 years, any 20-year period, the cost of a vehicle goes up every year, the cost of oil goes up every year, the cost of shingles on a roof goes up every year. What the variable, to my mind's eye, the variable is whether you're going to finance something and you're going out to bond. You know, that's the crucial part of where you want to be focusing your efforts on, is how cheap can I borrow money? How can I make my money work? And how long can I spread it out? So sometimes you say, all right, I want a 30-year mortgage, but I'm going to pay it down because I've got a lower rate and I got that extra money that I can pay it down. So you make the 10-year payment or the 15-year payment, even though you have a 30-year mortgage. So I think, you know, the critical part for, you know, capital improvement is bonding and how we borrow money.
And actually, that was a slide that I thought I had in here, but there was a slide in there that talked about the different financing methods. And, you know, it's one of three ways, which is self-funding, which is what we use mostly for our smaller equipment. It would be bonding, or then our third option would be a lease purchase option also. It would be another option for us to do. So that's why I also provided you with some information in regards to our TIF. So for instance, so I know this is really tiny, but our TIF fund is one of those funds that we have out there right now that we're supposed to be looking at and should start looking at for a number of reasons. One, it's, you know, for the use of any projects that we have on the horizon and how we want to look at that moving forward. So I provided this to you so you can have an idea of where we are right now with our TIF funding. This readjusts the TIF budget based on, in the past, we had forwarded you a budget that was based on TIF District 1 expiring. This puts TIF District 1 back online and keeps us, as you can see, where we initially had in 2028, that green was supposed to be what was supposed to be the TIF District 1 coming down. But now that it's not, you'll see that by 2029, we're going to be in the black again with our TIF, based on what we currently have on the horizon for projects. So as you can see, the only things that we have that we're planning on, that we've been bringing forward, was to use the TIF for the roundabout at Route 100, correcting the Route 100 at Range Road, building a tower, a public safety tower, and I think that was the three big ones that we have. And then still moving forward, about $600,000 for our paving, continuing our paving projects. And that's for the specifics each year. We get Mr. Bolduc, from our assistant town manager, will provide each year what the plan is on what would get paved. So as you can see, our fund starts growing, so we need to start deciding what we were going to do with the funds, whether we want to build something up and then use the money and self-fund it, or at this point we can bond and then use the money that we have in excess to pay down the bond. So that's why I also provided you with our bond schedule for both the general fund and the TIF fund, so you can see when we have some bonds coming off soon. So if there was a decision that we wanted to do a project and we wanted to bond it, it looks like in a couple of years we can, bring on another bond, and we'd have the capacity without having to up our mill rate in order to do so.
Is WC Water, that's West Cumberland Water?
Yeah, that was that one. That's done, but it was just finishing it out in '26, the payment to it.
Madam Chair, that's not the Bruce Hill.
That's not
idea.
Bruce Hill.
It's more
Okay.
to extend the water line
Got
over for Mineral Springs.
Okay.
The most
thanks.
recent one. One other thing to kind of put this all into perspective with capital planning is a lot of what Helene had shown earlier is, and I'm thinking about Councilor Mahalik and his question as well, just trying to say, okay, what do we know what our liabilities are going to be going forward? So this kind of gives us the ability, in the way that Helene described that, as far as funding depreciation and knowing that if you set us, you know that this truck's going to have a lifetime of X amount of years. We know we're going to have to do paving of a certain amount about every year. We know that there are certain elements of the buildings that have, heating systems have a lifetime of so many years, lighting systems on the public safety side of it, or EMS side. The air packs have a life of so many years. An engine has a life of so many years. An ambulance does. So that allows us on the day-to-day, year in and year out, plan the funding for those different elements of it and set aside those funding. So when we get to that point to replace them, the money's set aside, plus inflation, to make sure that we try to, or at least for all intents and purposes, try to track it to get to the point that when it's time to expire and replace it, then you have that. And so that gives us our bottom line or baseline, as we know what it's going to cost to fund our liabilities going forward and to take care of our needs of what we know. And then when we do, and then when staff brings forward an idea, or that council, let's just say, direct staff to come up with, to work on a project and come up with a solution, and to that solution there are dollars tied to it. For instance, looking at Greeley Road, to do work on that, different levels of construction or reconstruction that might need to take place there. That'll be a conversation in 2 weeks that we'll look at as well. Or if you're looking at running water on Bruce Hill Road, things along those lines, that would be above and beyond this. So a lot of that's what Helene's talking about here, looking at from the TIF funding, being able to use that or other available funding that might be out there, especially if you look at bonding that may retire as you go forward. So how that may impact the bottom line, because that may have taken place for other projects in the past that had happened. So it's a question of trying to find what your baseline is going to be, and that's your long-term 5 and 10 year capital plan. And then beyond that would be like your your special or larger projects that aren't part of this or get inserted as part of that, because that's been determined by the council that that's a project that the town wants to go forward with. So there's kind of two different tracks going on at the same time. They're running in the same direction. They just are parallel to each other. So hopefully that's helpful.
So I really like what you folks have put together in this presentation so far. I mean, it's mapped out to 2040. I mean, there's obviously a lot of hard work that's gone into that, and, it's not easy to do. I mean, I can't say I can relate because I don't do that, but I can understand what goes into it, because you got a whole bunch of numbers and you got to increase them over 15 years and then come up with a total. So one wrong stroke in Excel and it's all messed up. So that I can relate to. But, so it looks really good. And, like you and I have talked about, Mr. Manager, about, the visibility with the liabilities and stuff. I guess, and the reason why I've talked about this so much to you folks is I want to know, and I'm sure some of the, like 2 years ago, I was on the outside looking in. And if you handed me this Excel sheet and I looked at it, I'd be like, yep, a bunch of numbers, they add up to this, it makes sense, yada, yada, yada. But what's behind the 500,000, for example? What are we going after? That's step one. But step two, we've got all these assets. Where's the replacement calculated on asset number 1, 2, 3? And the reason I kind of am fixated on this is every time we have something controversial in the town that requires a bond or a vote, you got a group of citizens that are like, yep, I'm not going to spend another nickel. You got a group of citizens that want to spend everything. And then you got a group in the middle that is like, well, I think it's a good idea, but may have thought something totally different if they saw what was behind this. We're obviously not going to deliver on that before June. It's not possible. We don't have the time. But that's why I keep bringing this stuff up is just the transparency to everyone out there in the town, and what we have coming down the road. We've all recognized as a council that the next couple of years are going to be tough with the school. But if we could go to the school and say, hey, we got this coming down the line, like, this is really why we're looking for your help here and trying to do the best we can, then we got numbers and facts to put behind it and what it is. And whether or not they're going to buy into a sales pitch, I don't know, but it's just, it gives us some more numbers and stuff. So thank you for all the hard work. I'm really impressed with it. It's not easy, and so thank you.
There's a lot of assumptions in there, and obviously I could only assume things going out
Sure.
so far, but I try to provide realistic assumptions, be conservative in regards to what we plan on spending or how the increases each year would be. Again, it's to try and predict what, we all know that, Councilor Vail has suggested, is we know that costs go up every year, so we try to build that into this equation. The only thing that we can hold stable is if we take something out to bond, make the payment, make the purchase at a specific time now, and then we can lock in an interest rate and that amount of that purchase. So the TIF fund allows for us to do that. Again, if you look at our even our debt service in the past, we had a wave of it going up before it came down, but what we would do is we'd actually set aside a small amount each year so that it would make up the difference of that increase. So again, we tried in every manner we can, because once you bond something, you know what your payments are moving forward. So if we save a little on one end, we try to put that little savings away for a later use so that we can smooth out those payments so that we're not getting spikes in those payments overall. So in like the 5th year of a bond, if we know there's going to be a spike, but we saved aside, we don't have to change the mill rate, because we've set some money aside to make up that difference of that increase in that payment. So right now, we don't have any bond reserves, but if we were, say, for instance, looking at in 3 years to, if knowing that something was coming off and we wanted to add something, well, we can keep saving that difference and saving it for later so that when we do come online with it, guess what? There's no bumps in the road moving forward. We're still have that stable payment going across because we put some savings aside without changing any mill rates moving forward.
Sounds great. Sounds like great financial planning, so.
And every year we have each of the departments review their assets. I know this past year for our FY26 budget process, we brought on, the fire department took a really good look at their asset catalog, and there was a spike in it. And if you remember, even with that process, what we did was we were slowly bringing on the full amount of that depreciation into the budget because we didn't want to hit the operating budget all at once with the increase of the depreciation that we originally were saving versus what we truly need to save in the future. So we were adding it 25% of each value with on the back end using any end of year fund balance to make up the difference to make sure they were fully funded by the end of the year. So we try to take every effort that we can to ensure that we're not, we're staying balanced as we can and keeping the CIP, like Mr. Manager suggested, anything, the knowns that we know, we try to make sure they're accounted for and that we don't have a spike in the operating budget because of our CIP needs. So here's another picture if you want. This is, if you don't like looking at a spreadsheet with numbers, but this is basically the fund balance, the TIF showing the revenues expectation of what we're going to have in revenues versus what we have in expenses. And the red line signifies the fund balance of that TIF fund. So you can see where it crosses the x-axis is where we're going to hit 0.
X is right.
Thank you. At a 50-50 chance. I was always an algebra person, not a, I don't know what that kind of math is, but as you can see that we're on an upward trend really soon. So this would be actually a really good time to start thinking about what we want to do with those TIF funds, because I rather know that we're going to be spending it than having it stockpiled and then trying to figure out what we're going to do with the money.
So on that note, if we, this is a question for both of you, I guess. So we've been talking about bringing water to West Cumberland. How, in knowing that the Portland Water District would be kind of a dance partner in those types of projects, what kind of runway would they need as well? You know, if we were coming to the table to say, you know, whether or not it be the tank on Blueberry Hill or, you know, we want to make this happen, can we make kind of, how do we get something like that moving now, knowing, like to Helene's point, that things are going to be coming off the books and we're going to have to put that, or start to put that money aside or think about how that we're going to kind of spend that money? Like, how do we operationalize that?
We'd have to enter into those conversations with, you know, with the water district, but also looking at it and saying, okay, you know, maybe a 3-year type of plan, as well as figuring out the funding mechanism for that. So instead of, you know, would you allocate part of that, of those revenues, for instance, in this on, let's say, above the x-axis for debt service, if you wanted to do that, because you, instead of biting it all, you know, trying to eat the elephant all in one bite, you could look at that and say, well, if you had a bond, then you could have those allocated towards satisfying that debt service, because it'd be a pretty significant number. But working on, you know, in year one, working with the district to make sure that they have the capacity and the ability to do it. Year one plus to year 2, get the engineering completed for that, to make sure that it's going to match up what your desires may be, may line up with what the geography may allow. And then year 3, you'd be looking at, you know, RFP, going out and getting your numbers, making sure they align with what you're looking for as a project cost, and then you know, and all along with that process, public outreach and working with the impacted neighborhood. So that's probably about a 3-year window, I would think, start to finish, once there was a commitment to go in that direction. But we have, I know Chris and I have had some conversations with the district about that. You know, the concern is you know, pressure is a big deal. And so it would have to be, there'd be some infrastructure that would have to be there to push that water uphill, so to speak. So there is that side of it, but there's a lot, you know, there's a lot that could be done over the next 3 years. If, you know, if that was a council desire and commitment, then we'd say, okay, what's it gonna cost? How are we gonna do it? And how are we gonna pay for it? We'd look at those funds as a mechanism for that, as well as other areas. You know, what could you accomplish with those revenues? You know, with other things, looking at, you know, as Councilor Mahalik had talked about, Greeley Road, or other projects that might come along that the council feels are important. So it's just a question of, you know, aligning those with funding available to do that, and trying to make, you know, maximize the benefit while minimizing the impact on the taxpayer when it comes to that.
While we're talking about the water district and in Bruce Hill Road, the engineering for that, is that something they handle, or is that on us to figure that out?
That'd be us.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I
that'd be
get,
us with them.
I
obviously.
guess my thought on this, I'll share the rest of the council, is the last meeting that we were all here in December, I brought up Greeley Road. And, you know, looking at least doing the engineering on reconstruction, because I think it's scheduled to be paved this year. And I really just, like I said last meeting, hate to throw more good money after bad. I mean, do we look at finding out the cost to engineer water line for Bruce Hill Road, and, you know, find that out, you know, combined with Greeley Road or broken out, and then it's something we can decide, okay, do we at least do the engineering in 2026? I mean, even if we had oodles of extra money, you'd be hard pressed to get it done this year anyways. You know, trying to get it designed and have a contractor to do it and get it completed before December, so.
For Greeley or for
For both.
For both.
Yeah, you couldn't get a water main up Bruce Hill Road, you know, designed, bid, and installed right now. There's still a lot of backlog of work out there, so.
well, we could think about it for 3 years out.
Yeah, my thing is, if we do the engineering in 2026, we got a plan. And if we got a plan, we can put it out to bid. And, you know, then once we have a bid, then we can decide how do we want to handle it, so.
Is the
If
pressure?
it gives you a good barometer to go by, it was 2 years to extend the water line for Mineral Springs, and to do that across there, more or less from beginning to end of it, so.
But that wasn't with, do they have the pressure issue, or, because was it a pump station that we'd have to?
That's what you'd have to do to push it
Right.
up Bruce Hill, yeah. They don't have that same issue there, and there's water pressure, you know, west side water pressure issues as well. I'm not minimizing that, but that's a whole other challenge, is to push it uphill,
Push it
so you'd
uphill.
have to have that.
I just want to double check something, but I have a question in a minute, if anyone else has one.
I'm all for doing the planning stage for Greeley Road and Bruce Hill Road. I am a little concerned that Portland Water District does not have the capacity, and what little I know about the water lines and how they go through Cumberland, I would be surprised if they would give us a green light until there was that piece of section on Babbage Road completed.
And that's one of the big, I mean, that'll be the superstar solution to it, once that happens. The challenge there is about halfway up Blanchard Road, where that station is there, as far as pressurizing that and upgrades that would have to take place there, that they, you know, that's kind of more of a temporary fix. That's been a long-term fix for a while now. So it's a question, you know, if they could expedite that, that's probably 5 plus or minus years out for that connection from the Babbage Road tank, coming to, based on last conversation I've had. The conversation I had before then, it was 10. So they've got new leadership there, so I think they may be looking at it a little bit more aggressively now. So that could be a shorter-term problem. I know it sounds funny to call it short-term, because if you don't have the pressure you like, then it feels like it's forever. But as far as large government entities working, that's kind of quickly for a water district to do something like that. But there's a lot of line that would have to run. That's probably 4 miles of line that would have to come down, down Blackstrap to link up there. But it would dramatically improve it, I think, in the future.
So, just thinking big picture now. So, Helene and you guys have outlined this. We have, like, reading this loosely, it looks like in FY30 or starting in FY29, we're in the black. Then F30, we're triple that. So, from a planning perspective, should we be like targeting, thinking about capital TIF usage for 2030 or 29? 29. What would be a standing balance we should have in there for safety? Nothing? Okay. So then that would bring up the question of, like, 30 would probably be realistic for the water project. So then how do we have a conversation about backing into the rest of those funds and, like, really starting to plan that out? I don't know if that's today, or I don't know if we set another capital improvement where we have a larger discussion, get community feedback. Like, I want to make sure we're being, we are looking, everything takes time. So let's figure out what that time looks like. Do we wait until
Well, the throttling for the school bond, right?
Yeah.
So that's
we
probably
wanna
what we
pull
also
back?
want to talk about and look at, right?
is pulling back funds to offset taxes? So, like, what are kind of next steps, I guess, proposed? Sorry.
If it'd be helpful, Councilor Douglas, one item, and Chair Filson also just kind of
Alluded.
opened the door on that one. And I don't know if she was reading my mind, but TIF 1 and the extension of that from where that is, 75% of those revenues are looking to be earmarked for transit or
Yeah.
affordable housing. So that goes into the equation, and then that remaining 25% would be eligible for all the other allowed uses that are there. So that already changes that dynamic a little bit into these overall numbers. And then the other side of it is council may look at throttling it to offset the impact of the overall big picture
Yeah.
when it comes to taxes. So that'd be right around 29 or 30 as well when you look at that, because we're fast coming on fiscal year 27 now.
yeah.
So over the next 3 years, I know that there's the debt service that this is going to be ramping up into the school component of the mill rate.
Yeah.
So with that being said, council will have to look at those as areas. But if they're kind of like the three-handed economist, right? On the other hand,
Yeah.
there's always that other option. But it's there may be other elements, growth within a TIF district that may take place, like the Lucas Tree item coming online for 20. We're looking at that for fiscal 28. For that coming on with a significant increase on excise revenues that is in there. So all that comes into the mix as anticipated revenues. And I'm not going to write checks until they start
Yeah.
coming in. But things, this is kind of our best case scenario right now. But it does kind of give us an idea as to what direction. But the one thing you want to look at from TIF 1 revenues is that slide when it, after 2 years, when that the revenues from that TIF need to be allocated along the lines of the extension.
So I would think, and I don't know if this is part of finance or just part of, maybe we need to like workshop it, but 2 years isn't a long time, right?
No.
And we did kind of a straw poll after we decided to extend TIF 1, and at the time, the consensus was to, move towards affordable housing. Obviously, we can talk and discuss that, but I think it would be also helpful to get some feedback maybe from Alyssa about what's allowable, right? Like, does that mean infrastructure? Does it mean, like, what are the things, what are the allowable things that DECD would say kind of we could do that's facilitating that, right? Because I think there's probably a lot more, or maybe there are things that we're not thinking of, or I don't know. What does everybody think?
Go ahead.
I think it makes sense to get the facts, Madam Chair. I mean, we don't know what we don't know, right? It's like, we know that, and then we can plan onward. I mean, the better we have for a plan, the further I think we're gonna move forward, so.
Denise?
I remember when we had that workshop with Alyssa, and then we had to pick for the purposes of the application, right? And we chose housing.
We chose housing, yeah.
But then I thought we were going to follow up and have some sort of decision whether or not it was an and or an or on transit and affordable housing. Did we ever get anything back from that?
Yeah, that's a legislative remedy that has not arrived as of yet, so
Okay.
it's still
So for now,
an
it's
or
housing.
versus an and or at
Okay.
this point. So, if that changes within the coming year,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be great. It may be something for the next session as well. I'm not sure what the status
Okay.
is of that at this time.
But to that point, we could look at both, right?
Yeah, they
I
kind
mean,
of go together. It's weird that it wouldn't be and or because, you're trying to build affordable housing attached to transit so people can go to jobs. So it's, words matter. So getting clarification on that and whoever amend it or do whatever so it makes sense, as with many things.
Would it make sense to see if Alyssa, or if we should kind of workshop that out?
Or even with the TIF committee, to have that,
Sure.
it should be, or quite honestly, as we go into the budget process,
Yep.
when we start discussing TIF there, it'd be good to have her come for that component of the night.
As we go into budget, Helene, can we just have a sense of, and I don't know if it's gonna be in FY '27, but a sense of funds we would have access to offset the tax burden at all from TIF 1? Would that be possible, just to have a sense? I don't think would it be anything in '27 or '28?
It wouldn't be till 28.
Okay. Can we get a sense of what that is, like, at some point when we're done with the budget season, just as we're moving into next year? I think it'd be good to understand what that looks like, so it'd just be good to know.
Yeah.
For me.
We can throttle isn't there at least one other TIF that
TIF 8,
we can throttle?
Ocean View.
Is it?
Ocean View, yeah.
Yeah. So it could, for any that we can throttle, and when we can throttle them and what requirements and, strings attached there are.
Ocean View was the first one because it was the cash cow.
Got it. Yes.
What we
Sorry.
also can do is provide a listing
moving
from
slow.
each district, what was put in, so that what could be purchased out of each one. That probably would help too, as far as understanding if there's any shifts of what we have in the general fund that we probably could shift to TIF, or as well that we might have overlooked all these years only because we were always in a financially stable situation, but we can take a look at that and see if there's anything that we can shift more into the TIF moving forward.
And I think too, not to hammer on this, but I think this is also why it's important to get a sense or a pulse on the school funding formula as we start to utilize funds to offset our tax base. I think it's really important that we have a strong sense of what that looks like, and then also just keeping a pulse on it, because we are using a lot of our resources to kind of help the community, so. Anything else?
Yeah, please.
Madam Chair, so on the next round of capital planning with the Cumberland Town Council on the 26th, at that evening, we'll have our public safety team here, fire and police, as well as Public Works and the library. We'll have all four of them come that evening and to kind of look at what their next 5-year capital needs are, what they forecast as well And then also, we're working on getting numbers on a couple of the other larger projects, for instance, Greeley Road, as well as trying to work on getting a number from previous studies and updating that on the Bruce Hill Water Extension as well. So been working on that in the background to try to have that ready for the end of this month for that workshop with the council as well to, to kind of put that on the radar, at least on certain outer rings to see, kind of give you a feel for what that kind of commitment would look like.
Is that like a 3 o'clock start time?
I was gonna say, it's not only an hour, right?
No, it's at 5:30
Okay.
start, yeah.
Should that be a 5 start?
I
That's
feel
a
like
lot
it
to
should,
cover.
unless we're getting everything in advance, like
Yeah.
more than, 4 days or whatever in advance, so we can look through and be prepared with questions. Otherwise, we're gonna have to do the thinking in the moment.
We could look at
Which is
5.
difficult.
too.
Yeah.
5:30.
What do you guys, I feel like 5.
I feel like Bailey wants 5 because then the food comes, you know?
We can do that.
I do like to eat. I feel like maybe I'm the only person that ever is concerned about my food, so
I enjoy my food.
sorry.
I'd be happy to work with the chair and make sure we get that accurately done and forecast our time and review menus, Counselor Douglas.
Yeah,
We'll get you fed, girl. I promise.
I'm always worried about my next meal.
Okay, unless there are any other questions, we can take a 9-minute recess and then we'll start back up again.
Good deal.
Thumbs up.
Good.
Gotta run to the ladies. Okay. All right. Happy Monday, everyone. Today is January 12th. Shh. Today is January 12th, 2026. Our peanut gallery is finally piped down. Just kidding. Love you guys. We will call our town council meeting to order. At 6 o'clock, we had a workshop on capital improvement planning. It's the first of two. Our next one is going to be on January 26th with some folks from the fire department, from the public works department, as well as the police and library. So feel free to come and visit us. First up on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the December 8th, 2025 meeting.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the December 8th, 2025 meeting.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Great. Next up, we have our manager's report.
Get my microphone moved around here, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, I will be brief. As we had our workshop, we were trying to work on that and get ready. I'll have a more extensive one at the next council meeting. There are a couple of items upcoming, though, that I think are important for folks to know. One is weather dependent, and hopefully Mother Nature will help us out for the winter festival that our recreation department will be planning at Valhalla on the 31st of January. So stand by for future updates and hope for snow. So we'll keep an eye on that. The other item that I have is that I received notice today from Central Maine Power that there is going to be some work that is going to be done as far as pole work, replacements and lines that are going to take place over mostly on the west side. They're going to be taking place on January, or the estimated start date is January 26th. And that's going to be take place for about 6 weeks. And that's going to be on George Road, Skillen Road, Gray Road, and Highland Avenue. And what they're looking to do is replacing poles. When we have our municipally owned streetlights, they'll be swapping those over to the new poles and then doing some of that normal routine work. But they wanted to get that information out tonight. So in case folks will know, and that's on that when the council meets again. So that work should be starting in 2 weeks, and it should last about 6 weeks. So hopefully they'll move quickly and get the job done with little disruption to people's lives. But that's all I have this evening, Madam Chair.
Great. Any questions for Matt? Okay. We will move on to public discussion. Public discussion is for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Public discussion topics may be brought up again under new business for further council discussion. Is there anyone that would like to come on up? Please, come on up. I think you know how this works, but
Thank you. Shirley Story King, East Cumberland. And first of all, the first thing I'd like to say is I'm grateful for 5 minutes and not 2 minutes.
Shirley, use your microphone, please.
I'll be brief, though. I've sent you a couple of documents over the past month.
You
I
wanna
sent you
use
one
your-
today about
could you pull, sorry, Shirley, could you pull your mic just a little closer to you? Yeah,
Sure.
perfect. Thank you.
too tall. I shouldn't have.
I know, we need an extender.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
I sent you a copy of a Facebook post that I posted after the Joint Standing Committee meeting in December in North Yarmouth. And I want to thank the counselors who were there, Bailey, Andrew, Denise, and Jeff. You did a great job, and I thank you. And I would just like to remind the council that it was exactly 2 years ago this meeting, so the first meeting in January, that I made a motion to Chairman Mark Segrist that we asked the school district to take a look at the cost-sharing agreement. Actually, Chairman Barry from North Yarmouth was in the audience at that meeting for something else. So the fact that they said they needed more information or they needed more time, I felt was disingenuous to the whole process. So keep going, keep at it. I'm here to encourage you to keep it going. I know you know, but maybe the public doesn't know that there are many cost-sharing options out there. There are per pupil cost-sharing options. There's per valuation options, which is what we currently have. There's a combination of 50% per valuation, 50% per pupil, which when I was on the council, we ran those numbers for 10 years. And if we had done just a 50 split, 50% based on valuation, 50% based on student enrollment, we would have saved Cumberland taxpayers $1.3 million over 10 years. That's a lot of money. And I know you get it. I know you understand your fiduciary responsibility. So I'm really here just to thank you and encourage you to keep the pressure on. My second item, I sent information back in December, but it was over the holidays, is about the CMP expansion down in East Cumberland, where we live. And I know Denise came to the meeting. CMP held a public forum here in the council chambers. I found it interesting. They brought 2 security people with them. I ended up chatting with one. He went to college with my brother at Colby, but I don't know what they expected from us in Cumberland, but they were few on answers. None of them had even an awareness of the Brightline project when this expansion was first proposed several years ago. And, 2 minutes. So I had some conversations and made some suggestions, one of which came up in your conversations tonight about Greeley Road. So if one suggestion I made to them is that they be in communication with you, because an alternative for running those power lines across the Chandler Field and across Councilor Thorson's land would be to put it under Greeley Road and run it down through the Story Brother, because that's a public easement, run it under Greeley Road to the railroad tracks, and then run the line down the railroad tracks. They're looking to triple the size of that power line, and they're not going to add to the current poles. Their plan, as of the other night, was to add more poles. So there will be, what they fail to recognize is that they don't own the land in Cumberland along Middle Road. That land's all owned by property owners, and they have easements on it. So that's the second item. Third item, very briefly, I would like to see more advance notice on agendas. Back in the old days, when they used to deliver our agendas by police escort, we got them not the Friday before, but the Friday before the Friday before the council meeting. And I don't know if that's a charter item or not, so you might want to double check that. And then finally, I heard Bailey talk about keeping a pulse on people. I noticed on your agenda tonight you're accepting delinquent taxes. When you're doing your budget preparation, I always found it interesting to ask how many properties in Cumberland are delinquent on their taxes. It's a nice measure of the pulse in the community. So that's all I have. And thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else wants to come up?
Bill Young, Hedgerow. Just as when you're talking about FY28, attended a couple of the finance meetings at the school. And I will tell you, for the one campus project for FY28, they're looking at a 6% increase just on the one campus. So with TIF 1 coming on board, I mean, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, and I wouldn't want to be in their shoes there, because they really seem scared. They do, because they don't know what schools, what they're going to get reimbursed from the state. There's a lot of questions right now. And I just thought I'd throw that number out to you just for a consideration. They don't even know if it's going to be 6%. So just something to consider going down the road. That's all.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else? All right, then we will close public discussion and move into legislation and policy. Also, as part of legislation and policy, there is the opportunity for a public comment per Article 2, Section 7 of the Town Charter. There will be an opportunity for public comment on each item on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person, and rebuttal comments are limited to 2 minutes. 26-001 to set a public hearing date of January 26th to consider and act on forwarding to the planning board for a public hearing and recommendation amendments to Chapter 250 subdivision of land as recommended by the ordinance committee. It is my pleasure to punt this over to the chair of our ordinance committee, Councilor Thorson.
All right. This is one of three, so I'm going to try really hard to speak coherently. I burned my entire tongue on soup today, so I can't feel my face. All right, let's start with this one. We had a very packed ordinance committee meeting. It was good. We went through a lot of things, very large packets. One thing before I go into this, I would like to request that these items be put in full in the agenda online so people can see them. I know on one of these items, there were not any materials that could be clicked on and read, like personnel one, and I don't know if that is, you're trying to keep it within the ordinance committee or not, but people were having to come in and try to like steal paper copies from us because they didn't have it and they were interested because they were town employees. So that's my plug for that. And I know it's a work in progress on the website, but our smaller committees sometimes don't get as much love as town council does, sorry. All right, so on this one, we discussed a citizen proposal to amend our subdivisions and definitions to explicitly only allow conservation subdivisions to be submitted to the planning board, thereby removing cluster and traditional subdivisions. And the idea is that if we're already having a conservation subdivision as our default that we want to adopt, and it is mandatory already to submit it, why not make it the only default answer? With also provisions in there for allowing quantifiable, actual, verified extenuating circumstances for developers to, you know, have like a waiver rather than just it's causing some sort of nebulous hardship that isn't really provable. So strengthening that language as well. And ultimately, it was something brought forward because it's about our priorities, town vision, intentional development in accordance with the Climate Action Plan and Comp Plan, which I know is discussing this as well. So the Ordinance Committee voted to bring it to the council for discussion, noting that this is in draft form, and the town attorney also would need to ensure that these requirements would have language in there to cover extenuating circumstances so it wouldn't be viewed as a taking by developers. Currently in there also is still language talking about min-max lot sizes and setbacks, which may or may not need to be removed or updated with LD 1829 anyways. And so we voted to bring this here for discussion and forwarding onto the planning board, although knowing that this is also up for discussion with the comp plan, so there's that to weigh as well. That's all. Oh, and for anyone who doesn't know, a conservation subdivision requires at least 50% of the land to be open space with the goal of contiguous open space to preserve habitat resources and concentrate growth in areas not on farmland or wetlands or forests or other valuable natural resources. That is all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before we go into, or any questions for Denise on what's been kind of put forward? Yet? Okay, go for it.
No questions. I just have comments, but we'll do public comment first.
Let's do, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this particular agenda item? And I will just note that the motion tonight, or the action tonight, is to set the public hearing for January 26th. You can certainly come up and, you know, if you have anything that you want to talk about now, come up and get it off your chest, or, you know, something more positive than that. Feel free to come and talk all about it. But is there anyone that would like to comment on this before we move into council discussion? No? Okay. We will close public discussion on that and then move into council discussion. Bailey, did you have a comment, or are you not ready yet?
I'm not ready. I'm still
I
pondering.
bet Bob has a comment since he was there.
So this is just a motion for us to act on this on January 26th, and our action at that time is to forward it to the planning board. So there really isn't any
No comments, okay.
anything to really comment on, although we can either tonight or on the 26th. It's after the planning board comes back to us with their recommendation. But anyways, the object of this discussion, and actually the next couple of items on the agenda, is to clean up some of the ordinance language in our zoning laws. And as the planning board has on its agenda for this next month, actually, for this month, is a subdivision down on Bruce Hill Road, the Golf Learning Center, which is a conservation subdivision presentation. And it's an interesting piece of property, whereas the back piece of land is ideally situated for us to take advantage to tie in with existing trails and other pieces of property that are of interest to the town. So the idea that a traditional subdivision versus a clustered subdivision versus a conservation subdivision, this really is the direction that the comprehensive plan has gone in, where the Lands and Conservation Commission has gone on that direction, and it's a it's too bad some farmers buying it and are going to put a herd of dairy cows out there, but with that not going to happen, I guess this is probably the second best outcome for the land. So it's, anyways, it's going to work its way through the mill, if you will, and we'll see it back. But I think the idea behind the ordinance here, and particularly getting away from granting waivers just because somebody wants a waiver, this is the will of the community. This is the will of the people. So taking that language away from them is beneficial for us all. So one of us will make a motion when the time is ready.
Well, one thing, I mean, I think my only thought is that, and you mentioned the comp plan, but this is kind of the work that the comp plan is doing right now. And so, I mean, we're talking about land use and making our and beginning to kind of codify those recommendations at the comp plan level right now. And so I'm just wondering if we're not quite giving them the opportunity to make their recommendations by jumping ahead.
I think it could be argued that this was the direction from the last comp plan. Maybe it's, maybe we're just getting to it, but preservation of open space is a key tenet of the last comp plan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting that they're going to come back with totally different recommendations. I think this is probably kind of, I mean, you're at the meetings, I'm at the meetings. I think this is the direction that they're going in. But I also just want to recognize that there are a lot of people doing a lot of work, really thinking thoughtfully about the recommendations that they put forward. There's the data that's been pulled together, especially looking at, what types of housing people want in the town. I don't know. I'm just curious as to whether or not we should maybe put the pause, let them do their work on this, because it's coming. They'll be putting the plan forward. It'll go to the planning board. They'll see it anyway. Is there a big difference with putting this on hold, giving this to the comp plan to make their recommendations, or do we really feel like it's necessary for us or urgent enough for us that we need to move it forward right now? Just being the devil's advocate here for fun.
I'm looking for Bob's opinion because he's on the comp plan and he's read it. I mean, what do you think, Bob?
I don't see any reason to delay this. I think the pressures that are on our community based on the actions of the last legislature of 1829. We should be doing everything up into including a full moratorium on all building in this community until we have a comp plan in place. So the more ability we have to protect our assets, and I call that open space as an asset, the language of a conservation subdivision is in a sense protecting us as much as possible in lieu of a repeal of 1829. So I wouldn't delay this. I think that later on tonight we'll be looking at a letter that the town of Scarborough directed their council to pass, and it's was in response to 1829 to the state. So I think the message is clear. We need to protect our assets.
Sorry,
Denise, were you gonna say something?
I just had a moment. It's fine. I was just gonna say.
I know what you're thinking.
Okay. For me, since this is just forwarding onto the planning board and get their take, they could decide, yeah, let's wait for the comp plan. We don't want to, deal with this right now. So I'm less inclined to kind of hold back on that, especially since this is already supposed to be, what is taken. Like a developer presents a conservation subdivision, and that is going to be the preferred one anyways. So this is strengthening language. It's also kind of closing a loophole in there where, like, the hardship waiver is very vague and makes it so that, the developer actually has to prove that the conservation subdivision would be a significant issue for them, which right now kind of loose. So it's kind of like, yeah, submit it, but So I don't know. I would like to get the planning board's take on it to understand during their process. Is it usually like, yeah, the conservation subdivision is taken, and like the vast majority of cases in the process there is already solid enough to where we don't need this, or whether it would benefit them in their work to have more clear guidelines, basically. So that's where I'm at. I'm not necessarily for or against. I think if we're getting there, that's good. I think we should be doing conservation subdivisions anyways. Whether the comp plan arrives there or we do this now, doesn't make a difference to me, but I would at least like to hear the planning board's take on it.
I definitely am in support of a conservation subdivision. I feel like I've vocalized that prior. I feel like I'm a big proponent of it, and I think the loosey-goosey-ness of it prior is something we need to fix. I would ask the question of, like, is it administratively, like, how much is it costing us to have edits made from the attorney? Like, say that this goes to the planning board, we make the edits, and then we make the edits again in 6 months. Like, what's the cost of that?
We've been chunking them together, I know that, but I know Matt has the schedule.
Yeah, to that question, Councilor Douglas, that would fall under our general contract with Bernstein Sure. So it would be in our, it'd be work that they could do as part of their legal services agreement that they
Okay.
have with us. So it's not, it wouldn't, like, to review it or provide edits to it that would make it, let's say, in accordance with laws of the state, as well as in compliance or consistent with our comp plan. That'd be part of the work that they could do. It wouldn't be a special a special assignment, so to speak.
Okay. And what would the timing be that we would get that from the comp plan? June?
So, I mean, it's the goal, the first goal is end of April,
End of April, that's right.
and then it goes to the planning board. And then the planning board may send edits back, and then it would come to us. I'm totally in favor of conservation subdivisions as well. I don't feel good about this group putting all of this work, looking into zoning, looking into land use. Even if I agree with the outcome, they are putting a lot of hours, a lot of thought, soliciting community impact. And I just, from a process perspective, I would like them to have that opportunity to make their recommendations because they're looking at everything, not just RR1 and RR2. But that's just my opinion.
Can I ask the question, it goes to planning board, then comes back here and we'd vote on it. Would there be any harm in sending it to the planning board to then understand how they feel about it? So then if the time does come, we can vote on it and we just delay that vote? Or do we feel like that's impacting the process by sending it to planning just to get feedback?
I mean, they're going to see it either way.
Yeah.
And there are 2 members of the planning board on the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, I don't know, maybe Matt, you have a different opinion, but they're already in the know about it, right?
Yeah.
And their role is to,
Feedback.
and also help, us talk and think about all of these different things. I think the beauty of the comprehensive plan is that you look at land use for the entire town. And here we're just looking at RR1 and RR2, right? Because
To the opposite.
it all fits together, right? If we're thinking about a long-term strategic plan for our town and for land use, I think you look at it all at once, and that's kind of the strategy that we're trying to do, is looking at our growth zones, and then, how does any of those decisions impact RR1 or RR2, and then how are we going to, we're gonna have an entirely separate chapter on what 1829 does. I do think the resounding feeling is that everyone is on board with open space and land. Like, preserving rural character is at the forefront of all of these dialogues that
Yeah.
we're having within the comp plan. So I don't think it's necessarily about this isn't going to happen. I think it very much would happen. But from my perspective, that recommendation should be coming from the comp plan, which is supposed to be the foundation for our zoning, and in an exercise where you are looking at the town as a whole versus two of the zones. That's my, I don't know. Thoughts?
I mean, my thought is it's not gonna hurt to go in front of the planning board. I mean, but I kind of look at it as if it aligns with the vision of the comp plan, and let's just move it forward, tonight. And if it doesn't, well, we can always revisit it, or we can table it, I guess. But that's my thought. Move it forward.
Will we be making a policy change and then repealing it if the comp plan came back with something else?
I mean, they'd have to go through the whole ordinance committee and the whole thing from that perspective, but be a lot of work. I mean, I know April's the goal, right? But it's like, I mean, everyone's working really hard, but stuff happens, right? So April becomes May becomes June. It's theoretically we could table this for 6 months, but I mean, if that's what if we don't take action tonight, right, it's basically tabled. So if that's what we want to do as a council, we can.
Well, if we don't take, we're literally talking about land use
Yeah.
and zoning
Right.
in our comp plan meetings
Yeah.
right now. Like, our
Okay.
last meeting, we just looked at we looked at 2 of the 3 growth zones. We looked at a little bit of RR1, RR2. The next one, we're gonna be looking at West Cumberland as a growth zone. And those discussions are, how does this all fit together, right?
Okay.
And so I think my suggestion here is that we let them do their work, which is to look at land use throughout the entire town and make their recommendations to us, versus if we move ahead with it, and if that's what everyone wants, full steam ahead, we're sort of we're basically cutting them out of that process. And I don't think that the tabling really does too much, because, again, we have 2 members of the planning board who are on the comp plan committee, so if you wanted their opinion,
Right.
they could also do a little bit of a straw poll. But I don't think it's sorry, maybe I'm being bonkers, but I don't think it's a great look to not give all of the comp planning committee members the ability to discuss this as part of their larger conversations and
my-
recommendations.
My apologies. I thought when you said everyone aligned with open space, I thought you maybe already gotten through that portion, so.
No,
uh,
like
my- yeah.
it is like one of the biggest themes that we see throughout those meetings is we all want Cumberland to remain, retain its rural character. How can we do that and manage growth in a thoughtful way? But no, it wasn't specific to that definition.
Matt, what's the timing of, if this went forward tonight, then on the 26th, we're voting on it. If, and there's going to be a lot of ifs here, if we voted to send it to the planning board, when would the planning board see it? When would the planning board realistically get it back to what, when would this be potentially, assuming that the answer is yes, all throughout, this go into effect? Or this be voted on by us?
Possibly the second meeting in February, first meeting in March, if everything went according to as you just described it, Councilor Magoon. If the council went and took action tonight to send it to public hearing for the next meeting on the 26th, referred that to the planning board for review and recommendation. If the planning board looked at that at their meeting in February and said, this looks great, we love it, let's refer it back to the council, then it would come back to the council possibly by your second meeting in February, and then the council could look at that and then to set a public hearing in March for the first meeting in March, and then possibly action at that point in time. And that's if everybody thinks it's is in agreement with it as written. At the same time, if the council reviewed it tonight and said they want to set it to public hearing between now and the end of the month, I'd have the town's attorney take a look at that to make sure that what's recommended is in accordance with law, to make sure that at least the planning board's reviewing something that's legally permissible. So we'd have that domino knocked over in time for that process to go. But you'd be looking at first of March, best case scenario with everybody in agreement all the way through.
And we're hoping to get our first crack from comp plan in April, a month later.
Yeah.
That we think we know where the general consensus on this is, but there's it's not written yet. We don't know.
No, we're
At
writing
all.
chapters right now.
Right.
Like the work is all being done.
So we could potentially be in a situation where we're saying, let's go with path A in March, and that works under our current comp plan, and then our new comp plan comes out and says, let's go path B, and we're going a different route, and having to come back and, revisit just relatively quickly afterwards. I think I see where you're coming from, Tig, with the timing. If this was, 2025 and we were looking at this, I think I'd be looking at it a different way with the comp plan in where it is in its process and all, if this was in 2024 or whatever, as opposed to right now where we'd be getting a vote on this so close to when we'd have the new comp plan saying, all right, this is the direction the town's going to take for the next X number of years.
I mean, maybe another direction or option we could do is send this to the comp plan to look at I'd be happy to bring all of this to the comp plan as maybe I don't know if Bob would be, but something specifically for consideration. Would that be feasible, Matt? That would be allowable?
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course, Madam Chair. As far as, ultimately, the comp plan's not going to come forward with a recommendation on an ordinance change. It's going to say, in a
Broad
sense, the
stroke.
recommendation may be, preservation of open space is a critical element of, you know, is
we know
recommendation in the town. A vehicle towards that may be to revise our subdivision ordinance to allow for, to allow just for only open space subdivisions. And then look at that, and that could be a recommendation from there, and then you'd be back to the council, or they could look at that and say, that was one option, but there could be other options that may be in there as far as division of land for development could go. So they could come back with a comparable recommendation, and then you'd be back towards making the changes relating to those ordinances and charging the planning board to come back with what they feel is the best way to meet that recommendation from the comp plan committee, and then it would come to the council, and then you'd be back in the ordinance process again and amending, and then it would, I guess at that point, as you indicate, all the levers of government may be in alignment versus you might find that if you make a recommendation to the planning board to review and recommend, it may not come back with a positive recommendation. They may say we don't like this, or I think it needs more time, or we think that it maybe work for the planning board. I can't say what the result would be from there as far as what their recommendation may be. To Councilor Magoon's question was, what's the process look like? And as I said, like the best case scenario would be if everything lined up, you'd be looking at March, but it could come back with a recommendation or a different thought as to what they feel is the best path forward.
I had my hand up first, Bob. My finger's faster than you. If I may.
Please.
And that's why I don't see the harm in sending it to the planning board. If they say, nah, pound sand, wait till comp plan, great, let's do that. But like, time does not stop because we're waiting on the comp plan. Like, there are changes in here that need to be made anyways. I think we need to close the loophole on these like extenuating circumstances. Like, there are other things in here that are a bit shaky. And again, this is the draft. This has not been sent to the town attorney anyways to hash out the language. And it's the same as the next item on the agenda. What are we gonna like sit around waiting for surveys on dogs in town pooping everywhere? Like, no, like we need to make decisions, and I am fine with the decision of sending this to the planning board for their recommendation. Like, and then when the comp plan finishes, how many months are we gonna be spending looking at all our ordinances and putting things in place before we, pass all the changes we have to make as a result of that comp plan? I doubt it's gonna be in June. Like, what does that process look like, Matt? How many months will we be spending before we see any of that actually in place? Because it's going to be a lot that we're going to have to go through.
Sure, it's a great question, Councilor Thorson. What you end up finding is generally what I've experienced in the past, recommendations that come from the comp plan committee show priorities. It's like this was the highest priority, medium priority, lower priority. So there may be areas that they say this should be acted on first. Now, they could be, alignment of your land use ordinances in relationship to these recommendations, high priority. And then you would charge the planning board, okay, we need, what are the ordinances that need to be addressed immediately to get us in compliance or be in alignment with the comp plan? So they would look at that and make their recommendations to council and, follow the whole ordinance amendment process. So ultimately, part of that process is almost, crafting check boxes to say, this what needs to be done first, second, third, and or in that priority scale. So I guess ultimately that would come down to what the recommendations are from the comp plan committee versus saying, you need to change this wording from may to must. They don't
Right.
get to that granular level of detail. It's more high level recommendation, and then the ordinances then need to be in alignment with the comp plan from the concept down to the lawmaking authority.
So listening to all this, I got a thought. Sorry, Bob.
Bob first, then two.
Thank you, Denise. That was very well said. We have various committees in this town council. We have a ordinance committee, we have a nominating committee, we have a finance committee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, that being said, the ordinance committee has recommended that this go forward, and without further delay, I'm going to make the motion, after Jeff has his 2 cents there, to move this forward. And I think the point is, any delay is not productive. The fact that this is going to the planning board, at best case, I see it coming back to us, 1st of April, which is plenty of time for everybody else to voice their opinions, whether it's a comp plan or the planning board or the public, as to what a conservation subdivision is and all the nuances surrounding it. I don't think we should be delaying this. We've made a recommendation here, and let's get on with it.
So I guess my thought's pretty simple. Comp plan meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right?
No, two Thursdays every month, yeah. But now
Okay.
we're meeting more often because we're writing the comp plan.
Okay, so are you folks meeting this Thursday?
No, next Thursday.
All right, so never mind, my idea doesn't work, but,
There is
Yeah.
a comp plan subcommittee on land use meeting on Wednesday of this week.
okay, so here's my thought. We move it forward. The subcommittee takes a look at this. If anything holds out as horrible, then we got feedback on the public hearing date of the 26th. And the planning board's got planning board's got a chance to take feedback as well. So if somebody wants to bring it to the subcommittee on Wednesday, they get a chance to give feedback to the planning board as well as us. Then they're still in the loop and we still move forward.
I mean, my only thought is that I think it should be brought back to the entire comp plan committee, because the whole point of doing a comp plan is that you look at the holistic zoning for the entire town at the same time, because one zone impacts another zone, we're building a whole picture, right? I think this is exactly where we want to go.
Yep.
But I do think that they should have the opportunity, because we are literally writing it right now, for them to at least be able to discuss it as part of their conversations. It doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel like it passes the straight face test from my perspective to say, it's almost kind of like saying, like, we know better. And you know what, maybe we do, maybe that's why we're elected to do the work that we do. But I think they should have the opportunity as a group to at least weigh in on it. And maybe if that's at the public hearing, then that's at the public hearing. Anyway, all right, I'll stop
Yeah.
yapping about it.
Can I say one thing, Bob?
Please.
I think while I understand both your and Tig's stance on it, I think you're undercutting them if we go with the way that kind of Jeff proposed. And I think, like, as soon as you start to erode that trust between the council and other community members, I think you start to spiral this, like, dynamic. And so my proposal would be just that we table this one agenda item, let it go in front of the comp plan, let them give their recommendation, and also send it back to us. And then at that point, we can vote on it. I just think, out of respect for the process, I think it's in our best interest.
I have a question. Is the next comp plan meeting on the 22nd?
Mhm.
So Jeff's plan, yeah. Subcommittee could meet, potentially bring it up at the next full comp plan meeting for discussion. Then on the 26th is public hearing date, where then opinions could be given to us, and then at that point, you're, making a decision, right?
I mean,
Or planning board also has a public hearing, correct? So I see multiple places in this process, or in the calendar and these steps, where there are opportunities for public discussion and feedback on it.
I agree. I will also say that every comp plan meeting, I don't want to dictate what is going to be on the comp plan's agenda on the 22nd without talking with their chair, we also have GPCOG who's preparing materials. We could ask them to discuss it, but I'm not sure that doing the gymnastics around the dates is also fair, having not discussed what their next agenda is going to be. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that's why I think that just sending it to the planning board is what I'm in favor of, and not having to dance around the comp plan, but then I'm evil, so. whatever.
I didn't say evil.
I'll offer another one. They'll split the difference. We table it to the 26th.
To be fair, I just suggested that, Jeff.
Oh, you did? I thought, yeah, never mind. I heard, okay, well,
It's fine with me.
I'll table that one to the, I'll table that to the 26th, but I want, the dogs I'm not gonna wait on. It's only because they were talking about land
No, I
use.
agree. I'm not
Yeah.
waiting on the dogs either.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable. Bob and I can bring it back to them at the next meeting. We can do we can send the background information in the interim. Bridget obviously can. What do you think, Matt?
I'm just, my question is that a motion to table that's been made by Counselor Mahalik?
Did you
And-
make a motion to table?
Not formally.
Okay. I want to make sure we weren't out of bounds. I mean, I think a lot of things could take place between now and then if there's additional information that folks would like to have or counselors would like to have prior to that, we could do that. But also, yeah, it does give the opportunity for a couple of discussions to take place prior to, and then when you're not burning daylight too hard when it comes to it. As far as wrestling with the question, you do have, I mean, you're talking maybe a 2-week window difference of what we're looking at. So again, the Councilor Magoon's calendar question, you'd be looking at the second meeting in March if everything moved according to best case scenario or later. So but that would give you the opportunity for weighing in. The planning board itself, it wouldn't be on this month's agenda because that's already been set in their meeting next week, but it would be, for a month from now. So there's time there if the council decides to act on the 26th in one direction or the other to get that on their dance card for February as well. So you're not giving up a ton, I don't think, at that point.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to table agenda item 26-001 to set a public hearing date of January 26th to consider and act forwarding the planning board in the public hearing recommendations of amendment chapter 250 subdivision of land as recommended by the ordinance committee. In short, table to January 26th.
I'll give you a second.
Well, there's not allowed to be discussion on the motion, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. All right. 26-002 to set a public hearing date of January 26 to consider and act on amendments to Chapter 17, Animal Control, Section 3, Dogs at Large of the Cumberland Code of Ordinances as recommended by the Ordinance Committee. Counselor Thorson, if you're not too mad at me, can you go
You're
through
course not.
26-002?
So this one comes down to responsible/irresponsible pet ownership. At least that's my take. I'm not speaking for anyone else. Specifically in public town-funded spaces, in particular with Valhalla. So current ordinance states leash only on pathways from March 1st to December 1st. And then dogs are allowed under owner-keeper control from December 2nd to February 28th. The ordinance committee is proposing that this be amended to state no dogs allowed on the Valhalla golf course and its pathways from March 1st to December 1st. Dogs are allowed from December 2nd to February 28th with the following conditions. Dogs must be on a leash in parking lots and on the front 9, holes 1 through 9, and its pathways. Dogs can be off leash on the back 9, holes 10 through 18. And the primary reason for this, which I'm sure I could have asked you, Matt, to put something up, but I will show this to the audience, even though it's very hard to see. So every little red dot is poop. It's a poop. And there have been, let's see, how many?
33.
236 if you count the 3 that were in bags and then set on the ground, which is not helpful. This survey was taken by the Cumberland County Soil and Water Conservation District. They went out in late March of 2023 and did a survey of all the poops that were left behind after the snow melted. and it was just horrific. And most of them took place within a quarter mile of the parking lot. So obviously, people are driving there, walking their dogs around, misusing Valhalla, which we know from our budget process is meticulously kept very nice for everyone by everyone who works at Valhalla and handles that. And so this ordinance's goal is to eliminate the poop issue because people are not doing it themselves. And this is, it's kind of just one of those examples of like, you don't create laws and ordinances for the people following the rules. You have to do it for those who are just blatantly disregarding it and making the place gross for everybody. So this is our proposal that we are putting forth to talk about today. Restricting dogs. That's all I have.
Okay. Is there, and again, this is also, I know we sort of lied about the last one, but this one is to set a public hearing of January 26th. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this particular item?
In fact, I would.
Go, come on up. If you wouldn't mind just telling us your name and where you live, please.
Oh, Doug Brown, over on Carroll Street, between Hillcrest and Woodside. Now myself, I've been walking down there on, well, the last 3 years down at Valhalla when they're open. And like I had a discussion with the town manager, I think it's ridiculous to try to limit it because the bottom line is, yes, there's a lot of people that do not, say, clean up, but they do the same thing at Twin Brooks. And, you know, that part of it, how do you, enforce it? You know, and you want to put your dogs on the leash. You know, how are you going to, you know, most people, when they open the door, the dog jumps out. Myself, I've walked down there many times. I walked down to Twin Brooks. Everybody picks up. So I'm not sure who's not. But by your picture, you said there's 236 feces that had to be picked up. How much time was that? That's 90 days. So if you figure, you know, over 90 days, that's 3 people per day that are not picking up after their dogs, as opposed to the number of people that are picking up after their dogs, that are taking care of it and are trying to, you know, keep the place clean. So to me, how are you going to police it? How are you going to, you know, keep it happening? I mean, and you know, even keep dogs on leashes. And most of the time, in the 10 years that I've walked the dog down at Twin Brooks and Valhalla, I'll bet I haven't seen 3 incidences of dogs that were, you know, rough or fighting with other dogs or anything. And to me, by splitting it like you are, we're going back 5 years, which Bobby Scott at the time was the animal control officer, and he was the one that got it all, you know, dogs off leashes, because one half of Twin Brooks was leash in the morning and the other half was no leash. And then in the afternoon it swapped. So I mean, you just couldn't keep up with it, and like it was part of the enforcement. So to me, there's a problem right there. There's got to be another compromise along the way in order to pick it up. I understand the people don't want to pick it up, but you're saying, you know, put them on leashes, and I can tell you right in front of my house, the dogs are supposed to be on leashes, but I can tell you I pick up an awful lot, and most of the time the ones that do pick up, you go, hey, that's great, they pick it up, but what do? They leave the bag. So now you got to pick up the bag. So you're really not solving the problem, you know, or really can, you know, stopping it. It's still going to happen. You're just restricting the dog owners. And to me, that's a, you know, that course is, Valhalla is for all the town people, for everybody to, you know, do whatever they want, just like Twin Brooks. You know, they can walk down there, they can cross-country ski and everything. And that's the other thing. You shut off Twin Brooks on the Tuttle Road side from the dog owners for the cross-country skiers. Now you're moving us further and further in different areas, whereby we've just, you know, in the last couple of years, at least we go to, you know, Valhalla, and we had an open area for the dogs. So to me, there's a lot of people that walk their dogs and that are being restricted very quickly. So, I mean, I'd like to see the ordinance committee take a look at it and go down and talk to the people that are walking and see what they're doing. Because, and maybe, like I said to the town manager, maybe there's got to be a presence of, you know, the police or the officer, the animal control officer, to keep an eye on the people. Because to me, if you're walking your dog and you come back without a bag, you had to leave it somewhere. So I'm just kind of, you know, voicing my opinion, how much I've been down there and what's been going on. I hope the town looks into before they shut us off and restrict us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public like to comment on this? All right, we will close public comment on this and go into council discussion.
So, before the meeting, I forgot exactly what time, but sometime this afternoon, we did get an email suggesting that we add, and I kicked this to people for the ordinance committee, but we add Greeley Forest to this, which isn't in there at all, and just have it with the same rules as Ryan's Forest and Knights Pond, which state that dogs allowed under owner/keeper control. It's just that's one area where there's just no information one way or the other. Are they allowed? Are they not allowed? Are they allowed on leash? Are they allowed off leash, or anything like that? I think that's the one major area of town, open land, that's not addressed in this ordinance.
I mean, I have no issue taking this to a public hearing. And I understand modifying the ordinance in hopes of compliance, but I don't know if it's gonna totally solve the problem, unfortunately. So, but happy to move it forward.
Sorry, I'm just looking up. I would be in support of moving it forward. I think we're not restricting dogs. It's just having them on leash in order to be able to monitor more of their, you know, I think sometimes I give people the benefit of the doubt that like maybe the dog gets away from them, they poop, they don't see it, and that's probably potentially what 236 of these were. And to the gentleman's point, you know, it was over a long period of time, but I would be in support with having them be on leash in that area. I think I've just had my own experiences with dogs and think that makes me feel safer when they're on leashes. So I'm a big supporter of that, and also would be in support of adding the Greeley Woods into there as well for some sort of dog management plan, whether that's the same as what's on there or something different. That'd be my thought.
Just to clarify, right now they already are allowed leash only on pathways, so from March to December. The suggested change is to essentially ban dogs on the course and its pathways from March to December. So they would be allowed on leash from December to February, the end of February, on the front 9, and then off leash on the back. So, I mean, the rule would be pretty simple to understand. Like, if it's between March 1st and December 1st, no dogs. Mr. Sturgis, who brought up this change to begin with? Was it Valhalla?
This came from Valhalla staff, Toby, primarily, and the team that takes care of the grounds.
Right, which I think is a pretty
We have to
decent
respect that,
endorsement
yeah.
of, you know,
Yeah.
this is, the town employees are asking for this, and if they are asking in a way that is just to ban dogs entirely for the majority of the year, it must be a pretty significant issue.
Yeah.
And the more they have to deal with, again, this is impacting the budget. They're gonna have to bake in poop cleanup into their, you know, expenses, or we just let it rot and pollute the course, which is what nobody wants. So it's, and like a side conversation is that there is, you know, a committee that's supposed to be figuring out Twin Brook, and whether or not that would include a dedicated dog park perhaps, or I'm sure that's something in the comp plan that is going to be discussed with town surveys and stuff like that. So dogs are an issue all over the place in town, one way or the other. Lots of opinions on it, and there's also lots of things we can do about it, but the golf course is a golf course. So, I mean, and again, this is just setting a public hearing, like,
Yeah.
this isn't to listen to me make a speech, but this is the reasoning that's this is the source of where this came from. So I think
Yeah.
context is kind of important.
I appreciate that.
I'm in favor of moving it to the 26th.
Yeah.
And we will bring a dog park to the comp plan, because I don't think it's on,
Yes, let's do that.
because we've also got the Twin Brook long-range plan that's happening as well. So I would take a motion if someone would like to give one.
I'm ready to go.
Let's hear it.
I move to set a public excuse me, item dash 26-002. I move to set a public hearing date of January 26 to consider an act on amendments to Chapter 17, Animal Control, Section 3, Dogs at Large of the Cumberland Code of Ordinances as recommended by the Ordinance Committee.
I'll give you a second.
So motion and a second. All those in favor? Is that unanimous, Brenda? Is that Mr. Mahalik, were you affirmative?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Just check it. I know you made the
Hand up
motion,
longer.
but.
Just gotta count.
Okay, unanimous, Brenda. Moving on to our third public hearing setting date, 26-003, to set a public hearing date of January 26 to consider an act on amendments to the personnel ordinance as recommended by the Ordinance Committee. Counselor Thorson.
This is a big one. There's a lot to read. All good things. This ordinance has many updates, including revising disability definitions, probationary periods, suspensions, additionally using non-gendered language throughout, updating the EEO summary to expand and strengthen it, as well as kind of beefing up the harassment and sexual harassment section, additionally with the internal complaint process for those items. Also, a section better describing disability accommodations that are available and how those are determined, benefits, talking about the wellness point system. And there was a bit of a change so that the professional appearance and like dress code is less micromanaging. It's more of a general, we're all adults, you know how to dress professionally, make sure you do that rather than spelling out what items of clothing and how you have to wear them. Also a section on social media, usage including on and off duty posts, general respect, additionally adding post disclaimers for personal views right up front. So it was housekeeping, also some improvements, and I'm sure Mr. Surges has something to add.
Councilor Thorson, you did an outstanding job.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. A great summarization. Also, the wellness system has been overhauled within this as well to make it more, I guess, more flexible for employees and encouraging a higher level of participation for that. But overall, a lot of this is bringing it up to current speed, I guess, with language changes as well as some areas that were not consistent with past practice. So we're trying to get all that up to date now, and it should be a living document, but sometimes it needs assistance. So that's why this has been brought forward this evening.
As part of this I'm guessing this was like disseminated to town employees and maybe they got to give some feedback before
Yeah, we had.
this meeting?
Thank you, Councilor Thorson. Yeah, we did have, we had a number of different employees work on this. We've shot it out to people for review, had the town's attorney review that as well, to bring this forward. And a lot of this came from a small subcommittee that was looking at that and many of them were long-term employees, to try to find, what have we done? How does this, work in alignment, and what is obsolete? The clothing idea is one that's there, and the social media side of it needed sharpening up as well. Trying to just bring them all in alignment with current standards.
Before we do any more council discussion, is there anyone who is here tonight that would like to comment on this agenda item? Okay, I will close public discussion. Back to council discussion.
Matt, again, I'm going to go with the assumptions. Assuming that we pass this to go for a public hearing, can we get this with the red lines all one color? As opposed to, some in green, some in red, some in purple, some in blue.
It's because other people, it was multiple people.
Right.
But you want to just convert it all to red?
The ease of being able to see,
Yeah.
what was changed. And what was not changed.
We could do that,
If we can just do
Councilor
that, that would,
Yeah.
that would help.
Yeah, we
Thank
can,
you.
I guess, as Councilor Thorson mentioned, this does indicate the number of cooks that were in the kitchen when it came to that, so, but we can get that all redlined in one consistent color. Sorry for the confusion on that.
What do you have against colors? I'm just kidding. At least you're not red, green colorblind, or else it would just be gray.
It's all gray.
Just everything's underlined has changed.
Right?
Like any personnel ordinance, there's a lot of gray areas.
Oh, boy. Thanks, Dad.
Job description.
I really like that you have the required 30-minute break after 6 hours of work. I wish someone could come to my house and be like, go take a break.
I know, right?
I don't eat much.
It's been 12 hours.
Many of them are trying to bring language in consistent with what the requirements are, as where they're at today, as well as what some of our collective bargaining agreements reflect as well. So trying to have those in alignment as best as we can.
Amazing. There's a motion, I would take one.
Yeah,
since
I'll
we're
give
setting
you a
our public
motion.
hearing.
26-003 to set a public hearing, or I move to set a public hearing date of January 26th to consider an act on amendments to the personnel ordinance as recommended by the ordinance committee.
I'll provide you the second.
That one went to Andrew.
Oh, sorry.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Good job, everyone.
All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. And thanks, everyone who gave input on this. Okay, 26-004 to authorize the town manager to accept payment for FY 2024 delinquent taxes in the amount of $3,140.52 on property identified as tax map R08, lot 64. Mr. Manager, any context that you want to give us outside of what is in our beautiful packet? Or anything that's in our packet that you want to talk about?
Madam Chair, this is moving in the positive direction. I think there's a good plan going forward to bring this property up to speed and full compliance, working with town clerk and the property owner. This is a substantial start, and we do anticipate that this will continue and the property will be fully, I guess you could say, fully paid up according to plan in the near future. So I think we're in a good position when it comes to it. The recommendation is to accept payment and keep moving forward.
Would anyone in the public like to comment on this agenda item? No? Okay.
I'm ready to give you a motion then.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I moved, item number 26-004. I move to authorize the town manager to accept payment for FY '24 delinquent taxes in the amount of $3,140.52 on property identified as tax map R08, lot 64.
Second. Got it, Bob.
Any discussion on the motion?
No.
Call for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Matt, if you wouldn't mind just saying thank you to Jen Doughton. I
Will
think
do,
this
Madam Chair.
property went all the way back to Tammy O'Donnell working on the property with the owner, so just thanks for continuing that work. 26-005 to authorize the town manager to accept payment for FY 2024 delinquent taxes in the amount of $4,595.35 on property identified as tax map U14 lot 48. Anything else significant, Mr. Manager? Looks like this one's in pretty
Nope.
good shape.
Yeah, again, on this one, Madam Chair, this is bringing that up to current, and so we should be in good shape. The only outstanding will be the amount that's currently due, and I believe that's already, that'll be taken care of by this spring as well, so.
Great.
Yeah, it was just, I think this is more of an oversight of a property that was in transition of being sold, so I think that is why we're bringing this up to current speed.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this agenda item? Okay, close public comment.
Give you a motion. 26-005 to authorize, I move to authorize the town manager to accept payment for FY 2024 delinquent taxes in the amount of $4,595.35 on property identified as tax map U14, lot 48.
Second.
All those in favor? Or sorry, any discussion? No, all those in favor. Unanimous, Brenda. Sorry. Good to go. I know, sorry. Okay. Moving on to new business. We'll start with Counselor Mahalik.
All right, start off, $20 for the food pantry. And, got a couple things for tonight to bring up. You know, the Vining Way subdivision that we had the workshop on past meeting got me kind of thinking. And, you know, the easy land to build on for the most part is gone, or it's currently in a farming or agricultural operation. So I think building roads is going to become more challenging in the community, which means we're probably going to see more of the, you know, types of crossing ravines and stuff like that, where we get into this one-to-one slope where, you know, we've had a lot of discussion with. And so part of me wonders, do we need to look at our road standards and say, okay, we'll allow a one-to-one, run this by an engineer, but we'll allow a one-to-one slope up to 4 to 6 feet of elevation gain. And then if it's above 4 to 6 feet of elevation gain, it's got to be a 3-to-1 or an engineered retaining wall. And then that way we can kind of, you know, what's built is built down there and we got to move forward, but at least we kind of prevent us from falling back into this going forward and risking a road that's built in that type of manner. So I wanted to throw that out for, you know, comment with you folks. If you folks share in that, and then by all means speak up and we can take the next steps. So
Matt, when we were talking about Vining Way, there's some discussion I thought about looking at our standard. Maybe this was just, you know, Bob voicing his opinion of looking at the standards of what we would accept for roads, you know, in general and all. So I don't know if this is something that could get wrapped into what Jeff's talking about, or what Jeff's talking about could get, you know, wrap that into what Jeff's talking about, and sort of put an overall discussion of, you know, the standards for the roads, but then also what types of roads we're going to accept, because I don't think it's fair to developers to expect to have something accepted and then, you know, build to that standard and all, and then not have accepted because the people up here to decide, whoever they are, say no on that one makeup of the council versus, you know, the makeup of the council when they started the project or something like that, and sort of having a better idea of, you know, what we will accept and won't. Or maybe it's just that as long as it meets the standards, we're good, you know, but having a more clear breakdown of that, I think, would be helpful.
It'd be something that the ordinance committee could take a look at. To be frank, I think that's where that would go to live for a while, for them to look at that and know what the standards show, and then look at other examples as to what may or may not. Ultimately, that comes down to ordinance, and then would come back to the council and planning board as well, because you'd have to amend the ordinance to do it. But that'd be the way to look at it. And it's fairly common. Towns look at that on a fairly routine basis to determine, because there may be advances in technology or engineering that have taken place that may change that, or communities may look at that and say, well, this is, you know, they may find that they don't want to add to their inventory of roads to maintain and to manage. So there's ways that folks look at that. In the past, you know, there's just a lot of different moving parts, I guess, in it. But that'd be good for ordinance committee to probably take up as an item. That wouldn't be a 1 or 2 meeting type of situation. Probably be about a 6-month type of window. But I think it's good to take it's good and healthy to take a look at that from there, and it doesn't forestall, as you said, Councilor Magoon, acceptance or working on roads that have been in the pipeline, working under the, you know, honestly working towards acceptance and meeting the standards under which they gain their initial approval. So you wouldn't be changing the rules of the game on them. It'd be more in the going forward standard. You'd be looking at that with folks who would look at that in the future and say, okay, this is what we want to do.
The ordinance as it reads now, does not require us to take any road. We're, let's be clear on that. I think there's two issues. One, we can change the road standards. The road standards are not created just to protect the town. It's to protect the homeowners. That there's a standard that a road will be built to. So I'm happy to have the conversation either at the ordinance committee level or the full council of whether we should accept any more roads. And I think there's, the argument can be made that we should not be taking any more roads. It's, financial burden on the town. The same thing can be said about changing the standards, for Jeff's proposal of one-to-one slope, how many feet in elevation would we allow that, and then, something like that. And then, we can ask for, an engineer's input to help us craft those changes. So I think there's two issues, and whether that goes to the ordinance committee or the full council, I think is worthy of discussion.
And then we are looking to have Vining Way on for the end of the month. I was just waiting for one last piece of information to come, and is specific to the one-to-one slope examples. So I'm waiting for that to come along. We do have the compaction information, so hopefully by the end of this week, I'll have that to ship to the entire council with plenty of time to review that and digest it prior to the council's meeting on the 26th.
Didn't we talk about having a workshop on roads, on public-private?
I couldn't remember if we had actually,
Suggestion.
it was just a sort of a suggestion, or if we talked about actually having something, it's on the calendar some nebulous time, because we're coming up into a time where our workshops are pretty well spoken for.
But I think that, because at one point, Chris, when Matt wasn't here, had mentioned that it would be helpful for Public Works also to have a real understanding on kind of what that policy is, right? So that they can also plan. And we had talked a little bit about what Bob just mentioned, and also the other argument, which some residents have made, which is they're taxpayers in the town, and they are, they're paying into the town, and they sort of expect this service, right? I think it would be good to have it as a full council discussion, because it does seem like there are two very compelling arguments that can be made, and I would personally love to hear what everyone's thoughts are, but if you guys want to put it back to ordinance, we can do that too.
Madam Chair, February would probably be the soonest month you could look at that. One of those two meetings in February, after it turns to March 1st.
Yeah.
Council's dance card fills up real quick, as you know, with budget workshops going forward. So at least for the following few, 2.5 months or so. So we could work for something like that, maybe in either the first or second meeting in February to do that. Take a little bit of time, but we could get, possibly Doug Reynolds to come in and talk about that from an engineering side of it, or Dan Diffin, as well as Chris, Mr. Bolduc to come along as well to talk about that side of it and what the process, and we could assemble quite a gallery of resources to come.
I mean, my whole thought on the one-to-one slope is just, we get any type of catastrophic storm, it's like, to fix that, it's not gonna be an easy fix, that's a permanent fix. So it's like, if we can limit our liability on future roads going forward with a 3-to-1 slope, then I think it sets us up in a good place moving forward. But
I'm gonna need a visual on a 1-to-1
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
a 3-to-1,
That's
because you could be speaking Greek
that's
to
what
me.
we're working
but,
on.
Is there consensus sort of from everyone that a workshop would be a good next step, or would you prefer to send it to ordinance?
I'm good with the council's consensus, so.
I like workshops.
Bob? Yeah, okay, cool.
We can work on that for February.
Get that scheduled.
And I got one last simple comment. I just wanted to say, hats off to our town staff and Public Works for the month of December. It was in my opinion, a challenging month for them, especially that storm that ended on Christmas Eve. That thing snowed overnight, like 3 or 4 inches an hour, and then all of a sudden at like 6:30, it was like somebody turned off a light switch and the sun came out. So I think they did a really good job for, what they had to contend with that month. So hats off to them.
Thank you.
Denise?
seems like a lot of time has passed since we last saw each other. I almost forgot we had like the whole joint standing committee meeting. I wanted to say thanks for having me, because I'm not part of that committee, but you know, we had something to talk about. So thank you for allowing me to give my speech and talk about revisiting the funding formula and stuff. Basically, like, I don't have all of the history that, you know, Shirley had brought up and the years and years that this has gone untouched, you know, for decades. I want to make it clear that, like, whenever I go into meetings, I come with my own analysis, my own research, my own thoughts. Sometimes when we're talking about financial stuff, there's rhetoric flying around, and, you know, some members of the public are upset because it's like, you know, it's a touchy topic, and it's very important, and there are, you know, organizations in the community dedicated to this kind of thing. But at the same time, sometimes the vibe is a little off, and that's kind of what I felt at that meeting, that I walked into a situation that felt like it was different than I thought it would be. I was there simply to convey information and try to get a conversation going, and I left feeling like I was like cheerleading for a team I didn't know I was on. And so I want us to keep talking about this stuff, but I really don't want to be put in the middle of drama between people in another town and our town, and how that all goes together. I know it's complicated because we are two towns, you know, sharing a school district, and we are very close, but we're also very different. And so, just to be very clear, like, it was not my intention at all to go into a meeting with any sort of like hostility or anything, or putting anyone on the spot. It was simply to start a conversation, and I still think that it's the right thing to do to reevaluate this formula, so that whether it's us shouldering an equal burden because we have all these kids in the future and students in the district because we are growing at a much faster pace because of, you know, 1829 or not, whether, you know, that looks like more expensive for Cumberland in the future or not, based on whatever ratio or proportion we go with, making sure that it's just fair, and fair is fair. The simplest we can make it, that also is future-proof, so that, you know, yeah, it ages well, exactly, and there's, you know, checks in place, and making sure that, you know, the percentage doesn't vary so wildly. Maybe there's like a cap on how much it can change year to year, but just something better than we have now based on actual, like, research, and if what we have is best, then fine. But going through the process, there are multiple jumping off points. It's a long process, but I think it is time, but also at the same time, I want to make sure that, again, like, this is a group effort, and, you know, it should happen, but at the same time, understanding that I'm an individual, I have my own thoughts, I come into meetings with my own thoughts, I'm not part of any group, I am myself, and we are all trying to just do the best job. So that's where I'm at. Thank you for listening.
That's what we're here for. Mr. Vale.
I have, and I think you all have a copy of this in front of you, or it's from the town of Scarborough. I was at a Cumberland County budget meeting last week, and was chatting with the fellow from Scarborough, and he said that his town was getting together a resolution to send to Augusta, and I asked him to send me a copy, and I passed it on to Matt, and Matt, in fact, had been privy to it also at about the same time. As we know, the state has passed legislation last year that has profoundly affected the planning of land use in our communities. And so I think that it's Scarborough's response here might be a little different if we read it thoroughly than what we might say, but it certainly captures, I believe, a number of points that I think that we should be crafting a response also. I did ask Matt to reach out to Teresa Pierce to come down and meet with the council to give us some insight as to what the state was trying to do and to hear our concerns, and that has not happened as of yet. But anyways, I'd like us to take a look at this, I guess for the public's understanding of this. I might read a couple of the bullet points here. Whereas, while the town of Scarborough acknowledges the state's goals of increased housing supply, the implementation requirements of LD 1829 present critical challenges that threaten our ability to manage growth responsibly and maintain the quality of life our residents expect. And I think we could substitute Cumberland in there, and no one would argue with us. Whereas the mandated density increase under LD 1829 exceeds the capacity of existing municipal infrastructure to support new growth, including water systems, sewer systems, stormwater management, transportation networks, schools, required capital investments that exceed local budget capacity will require state financial support. Whereas the prohibition on growth caps in designated growth areas eliminates a critical tool that municipalities have used to align development with infrastructure capacity and comprehensive planning. I think it's incumbent upon us to draft our own response. It's the legislature's back in session. It would be nice to have something drafted in the next week or so that we can have ready for our next meeting and respond to this. So, again, the state has goals like we all do. And one of it is housing. I think where the state missed on this is affordable housing. It's nothing that I've saw in the LD really breaks out affordable housing, senior housing, elder care, or any of the things that the town of Cumberland really needs. The town of Cumberland does not need any more $1 million homes. The town of Cumberland needs workforce housing, affordable housing, senior housing, nursing home, elder care, end-of-life care. And we should be promoting those efforts. Okay, that's it.
I'll just say that the one part of this that I underlined is whereas experience with previous housing density legislation demonstrates that increased density alone does not guarantee affordable housing outcomes. And I think that that's something, like, that's a,
Really good line.
yeah,
It's
and
like
it,
the YF
like,
in
it's,
Falmouth.
yeah, like, so even.
$1 million condo, yeah.
I think in Scarborough is obviously with Scarborough Downs, they're very different than we are. Like they have, done a lot with affordable housing. I think it's a great idea. I think that our criteria are slightly different because we are different than Scarborough, right? But they put something out. I'd be down for brainstorming a little list of things that we think should be brought to their attention.
I'd support sending something up to Augusta if we can get something together that we all kind of agree on.
The part for me is also, it's a mandate, but it's completely unfunded. Like, again, like in the section, ignoring that there's like a 4 in infrastructure and systems for no reason. I know you saw that, Andrew, and everyone else, but exactly, like, how exactly do you plan on us supporting all of this sudden growth if you're not funding our infrastructure projects? Those are the most expensive things we could do. So it's difficult. It's like, unless, there's permitting processes like, sorry, you can't build here. There's not enough, capacity or whatever. So that would be the limiting factor. But again, it's like, is that how you want us to use this tool, or would you rather us do it the right way and like mindfully and do it right, based on this is where we actually want this, and so we're going to build infrastructure to support it rather than, infilling all of Tuttle Road because, that's what we're looking at. So it's, for us, I'm sure that some of this would not apply to us. It would need to be tailored, but I am open to seeing what we come up with.
Well, the 4 is there because
applicable.
the 4 is there because it's gonna cost 4 times as much.
I'm in support of it, but I do feel like when Mary was here, she had mentioned that she was going to send some of that stuff back, wasn't she?
I think
Mary?
Our lawyer. Costigan.
from Bernstein Sure.
I feel like when we talked through, maybe I'm wrong or misremembering that, but I feel like
Yeah.
she was also supposed to provide some of that feedback,
That's true, I remember that, that our concerns were supposed to be relayed
Yeah.
someplace.
which is fine. I'm happy to do this too, but I feel like maybe just check in with Mary to see like if that went anywhere would be good.
Well, and I think Christina Mitchell, because Christina also emailed and said that she had been in, is it Eric? Sorry, I don't recall. She was also in touch, as was, I think, Steve Moriarty, on the comp plan level with someone. And I think
Yeah.
there's been a little bit of back and forth there. So I think it would also just be good if there have been some dialogue for us to
know
be
what it
brought up
is.
to
Yeah.
speed. But I think
Agreed.
this would be a great.
Yeah, yeah. Just flagging that, that's all.
But we could maybe get
There's,
that information.
there's also an effort from GP cog as well, from all the
Yeah.
member communities. We sat in on a larger scale, I guess, regional meeting last week on Zoom to talk about a lot of similar points. Tom Hall, the Scarborough manager, was there, and we were talking about their resolution that they acted on that evening, and then as well as Wyndham has taken a similar resolve, so they were all in the room as well. So we're looking at that from a super regional standpoint to convey that to the Speaker of the House, as well as many of the other, let's say, elected dignitaries, as well as others on this list that they're distributing that letter to. So I was waiting to get that final draft from them, from what they're going to also be sending, so I can have that for council to look at for the 26th, as well as I can probably get the Word document on this and try to work with that and speak with the town's attorney too, and say, okay, where are we at with this, and what can we do on an individual town basis to advance this question, and maybe wordsmith this some to more reflect where we're at as a community, and then have that ready for action at the next meeting, and then get that and then distribute that upward.
'Cause I think it's just a good exercise for us to go through, even at the council level, to discuss what our big concerns are, right? And even, like how this impacts all of us, right? Because they've created this policy, and even just looking at this, like, yes, of course, Scarborough's so different from Cumberland, right? So of course, what they've put forward is going to be wildly different, but the exercise of going through it and codifying what our concerns are and what we might want to change, I think it's good for us to do that exercise as a team, but then also they've given this one size fits all, and it's important to show that the communities in Maine aren't one size fits all, right?
Question. So we recently, not me, we approved changes to our ordinances based on preemptive changes to bring us in line with 1829. So where does that leave that? Because this group decided to implement those changes, which might not actually go into effect to the detriment of the village commercial district, like, or, oh my God, am I saying the wrong one?
CSS.
Commercial, yes, the south,
Of
on
Commercial
the,
South.
yeah, that one. So are there more of those coming our way? Like, what are we going to do when those do come our way? That, like, it just seems kind of like a disconnect based on what we've done versus now what we're trying to do now that more towns are coming on board against this.
We did leave a tool in the toolbox. We left the effective date to be July 1st.
July, that's right, I
So,
forgot. Thank you for reminding me.
Councilor Thorson, do you question as well, that you're really talking about two properties, or two parcels at this point that had that as a test case versus,
True.
for all intents and purposes, like, let's say the length of Tuttle Road, for instance, which would keep me awake at night.
Right.
Quite honestly, but yeah, with this, it's kind of as a test study, or let's say incubator for that. That's probably the lowest impact you can find, but But as Council Vale said, you know, you're looking July 1 type of an effective date there. So I think there's, as far as hedging your bet, you're probably in the best case scenario
Okay.
when it comes to it. But there, Bridget did tell me today that, you know, there is some guidance that is starting to come down from the state on it. They released some guidelines today. I haven't had a chance to review them yet. She's in the process of reviewing them, but there's not, let's just say, there's not a gigantic paradigm shift
Right.
from where they were. It's been more clarifying. So the thought may be now at this point with resolves such as this or other actions from communities that, you know, to get that in front of the legislators and say, hey,
Right.
you do have some issues here that you have to fix. And, but, you know, my concern, and Council Vale were in a meeting today earlier, looking at it from, you know, a whole state standpoint. It's like, well, what parts of the state have water and sewer? Well, the majority of them are Cumberland County, York County, Saginaw, eastern Saginaw County, and some other pockets. But we need to have a policy that really looks at the whole state and
True.
looks at that. So now it's kind of like, well, we're going to have the burden of all this housing is going to go in these 3 counties.
Yeah.
And we're going to build our 84,000 units there. Well, that doesn't make sense at all because the need's pervasive. So
Right.
that's my only soapbox issue. I'm done.
So do you foresee us not getting any more preemptive zoning changes that aren't just bringing it in line with existing prior to this state law? Like, should we see any more of that coming?
I don't think any of our towns, I mean, I think Cumberland is well ahead of the curve when it comes to it in comparison to like a lot of our surrounding communities that I don't think are anywhere as near it. Speaking with, you know, Nathan Poor, Falmouth manager today, earlier, they're not going to be ready for July 1. I think we'll be close to it, but I think we'll also need time. But I mean, fortunately, there aren't teeth in it that can say you have to do it. It's just a question of if someone comes in, if you're not making reasonable progress, you don't want to get caught completely at unawares. If you're close to it, you can do it, and someone who may come in with rights as established by law can ask to have those rights exercised, but it's a question of trying to find that. But we don't have anything in the pipeline right now that reflects that type of demand. Doesn't mean that something can walk in tomorrow or someone's not making designs for July 1 of 26 to do that. But right now, I think we're in good stead, but it's going to be tight to have a July 1. And I think most towns are, you know, even with us being in really good shape, I think we're going to have a hard time meeting that, as most, if not all, towns are. I mean, I don't think Gray's anywhere near it where I live. I mean, they don't have sewer, or you know, whereas other towns like North Yarmouth, it's not an issue because they're a select board town. So for them, it's July 1, 27. So for, you know, there's a lot out there. So I don't have a better answer.
How do you sleep at night?
I don't much.
Aw.
No, I'm just kidding.
What else, Bob?
As Matt said, we did have a meeting earlier today with Falmouth, Yarmouth, and North Yarmouth to further discussion about ways that the 4 communities can work together to collaborate. Big goal, save money. I'm not sure we're there yet. One of the interesting things that came up, and we didn't bring it up, but I think it was Nathan Paul, was about a facilities manager, and we tossed that around for a few minutes. And it was interesting because it has come up at the school board level years ago when I was on the school board, and the importance of it then. It's come up here on the town council. And in fact, Matt shared how it, you know, maybe it was be a position that is not a direct hire, but might be a position that is as a contract, much like we have a contract with Siemens. We might have a contract with an engineering firm to review the 4 communities' buildings, their mechanical systems, and something along that line. And I think that's an important position that we need to talk about at some point. I think it's, even if we don't have that discussion with the other communities, it's a position that I think there's enough changes going on in technology over the next few years, that it might be a conversation to have. Not to belabor the whole thing, we did end with the managers discussing where do we go next and how often do we want to meet. And so there was a talk about maybe that the managers would get together biannually, but I urge that the leadership of the 4 communities, and in fact, there was suggested that we include Freeport into the conversation to get the either the chairs and vice chairs, or that they would appoint people from their select boards and their councils to have a working group, and that we would sit down and give a high-level 5-year lookout, a 10-year lookout, and some challenges to the managers to say, how can you implement these ideas? How can we put some of them into work? So I think the idea was that we would get the group together, the 5 communities, this winter in preparation for new leadership in June. That pretty much covered, Matt?
Yes, sir.
That's all.
Is the next step for us to all think about, I imagine you might be willing to be one of the people,
Yes.
so maybe finding you a
Show
buddy.
up even if you didn't.
But also finding you a buddy.
Yes.
All right, so then everyone, maybe we can all mull over who wants to be the buddy of Bob, apart from being your regular buddy.
It's only twice a year I'll deal with Bob.
I think the
for
managers are twice a year.
Oh, well.
Well, unless our recommendations were different.
Is it, unless your recommendations are different? Okay. Bailey,
Nothing new for me.
Andrew?
So the LCC, I think a while ago, put forward something about suggestions on compost. We had them here, and they had a few different possibilities. But if I recall correctly, they suggested trial run with opening up the brush dump to compost, so we can have compost there. We can make our own and all that. I wanted to see where that is before coming before us, and B, I want to say I'm a little hesitant to have it come before us, given the cardboard situation, where just cardboard turned into anything, and if it was full, it turned into just piling stuff up outside, which I'm guessing added some unkind words and work from those who had to take care of it on the town staff side. But more on the compost bit, just wanted to sort of see where that is, if that's, on the list of, agenda items to take a look at. And what, I don't remember exactly what they proposed coming forward, but I think it was opening up the brush dump for part of the year to compost.
They also suggested potentially implementing an ordinance that banned food scraps and trash, which is completely unenforceable. I appreciate the thought. It's just when we were thinking about should we take this ordinance committee perhaps? Or I know I had talked to Matt about it briefly, just talking about the options and what actually is feasible or is not. I think the feeling I had was that maybe we would be best served by sticking a couple garbage to gardens in key locations around town. And that's what we start with, because it's not us having to manage it. It's very clear what you're allowed and not allowed to put in there. And kind of going from there, it's the lowest risk thing. And then that would be talked about during the budget season,
Yeah,
potentially.
I remember when they were meeting here and sort of did the result of the interns
Right.
thing, they had those 3 options. But I think afterwards, the LCC actually voted to bring forward just one of those to us to actually, do something with. And I think it was just the compost at the brush dump, and not, like you said, there was an option in the presentation of sort of we could go as far as an ordinance banning food scraps, but that wasn't, I don't think, put forward to us from them outside of the presentation of here are some options that we came up with.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember when did we get?
It was when Sam was here doing her presentation on what she had done over the year, but I remember Bill Shane telling me about the pilot program at the brush dump
It was
that
like diapers.
there were diapers, black flies, like it was a dumpster fire. That's the wrong analogy for this situation on composting, but that's, we tried it once and it didn't go particularly well, which is what I think also why we were looking at the garbage garden option being more viable, right?
Well, I mean, you're gonna have the same issue there if, we're gonna find out real quick within a month or so if people actually just bring food scraps or if they put
Diapers.
diapers and everything else there.
Matt, thoughts?
It may be a good question to speak with Mr. Bolduc when he comes at the next meeting, because he was here when that took place, and he can talk about the rodent control issue that
During the dark
Oh, right,
also
the
came about
rats.
related to it. Yeah, and it was rats, and there were other. It didn't really go well the first time, I guess would be a good way to put it. So maybe a good question for Chris. I think where Councilor Thorson was talking about as far as the potential for doing that with a couple of, like, locally or conveniently placed compost drop-offs, maybe, at least as far as from the staffing level and the management level of it, I think that would probably be the more, or the lower impact. And it's just a question of then getting a number from garbage to garden to say, okay, for a larger dumpster to do it, because to do it on Styles Way, I think we're going to have, I guess, history doesn't repeat itself, but as they say, it often rhymes. So you may have a really strong rhyme coming there.
Not to be like super weird about it, but maybe in locations that have cameras around, closer to municipal buildings or near the library or something, not down at the brush dump where no one will know what you're doing.
Yeah, but the higher visibility location would be good. I mean, convenient and high vis. So it may be a good question to talk to Chris as far as, prior experience, and then also look at that and say, if we do it, what could be a good way I know EcoMain's also considering different approaches when it comes to that, because they want to get food waste out of MSW because of the tonnage and where it's at. So there's a high level of motivation there as well. So there's that too. So there may be another product line coming forward or another option in the near future. But for this year, we look at it from a budgetary standpoint.
I mean, I think also like making it more equitable, the access for all people in town, because for folks in West Cumberland to have to schlep all the way to Styles Way, like that's not really fair.
Yeah, you'd have to look at a couple different locations.
Yeah, it would be
To
good
do
to
that
kind of spread
geographically.
them out a little bit more, right?
We should be able to, we're not the only town that's ever looked at this and sort of, there got to be others that have said, yeah, it really worked when we had these placed at these type of locations, and it really didn't work when we had it placed at these type of locations, and
Right.
sort of, let's not reinvent the wheel. So if we can,
Tap.
find other towns that have done it and say, all right, yeah, well, let's use what really worked for them and see if that really works for us too.
Yeah, food waste is a toughie just because there's, if you're just talking, non-meat based, it's one area. But once you put protein into the situation or meat into the situation, all of a sudden the licensing and the processing and all that takes a whole different level of direction.
I'll make a plug for the Mill composter, which I have, which literally overnight it breaks down, dehydrates all of your food scraps, and then you can use it for chicken feed. It's so efficient. I now have neighbors who drop off their compost at my house, or food scraps at my house, and it helps feed my chickens, so.
Do you feed your chickens chicken?
I do not, actually. I think that's really weird, and I do not put any chicken scraps in there, but I do give them to the crows, so.
That's nice of you.
So if anyone has any extra scraps, feel free to drop them off at 363 Main Street.
Why would you say that?
Call
Why
themselves.
would you say that?
I mean, someone sent me a toilet seat once in the mail, so it can't get worse than that. You know what I mean?
I'd love a free toilet seat.
Okay.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, can I make one more comment before we
Please.
get started? So I just want to say, I think we had an excellent capital improvement workshop, the start of this meeting. I think our finances are spot on. It just comes back to, I think, visibility. And in preparation to this workshop, I kind of did some research at what other towns around did, just because I was looking for a cost number for something actually. And you know, if anyone's curious, I'm gonna pass the Town of Freeport's capital plan down.
I already read
But
it.
it's for 2025, and I think what they did was really good for the citizens of knowledge of each asset, so to say, and replacement and so forth. And this budget season, it is what it is. We don't have time to change, but, you know, I'm just wondering if maybe, you know, and I mean, I'm willing to help on this, but if we can look at maybe another way to kind of show what we have for asset inventory and put a little bit more visibility to it so everyone knows where it stands and so forth. But this is kind of a good example of what somebody's doing that is pretty transparent, in my opinion. So,
They have a sun porch in one of their buildings.
Yeah.
Fancy.
I liked how they talked about that, you know, woodpeckers have destroyed the siding and now there's rodents climbing into the holes and this is why we need to fix it. Like, this is tangible, you know, reasons why we need to replace things. So I appreciated that.
Thanks, Jeff. All right. I guess it is the time of evening in which we will move into executive session. Do we need a motion to?
Do you not have new business?
No, I don't have new business right now. I think I
Lucky you.
gave you all an unwelcome update on the comp plan during the first item on the agenda. Do we need a motion for that, right? To recess? Bob, you on me?
I move to recess to executive session pursuant to Title 1 MRSA 4056A regarding personnel matter.
Is there a second?
second.
All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Give folks a minute to clear out. Thank you for being here.